One of the best trips I ever took was to go to Australia. I went whitewater rafting the Tully River, which was one of my favorite things I'd ever done and still remains one of my favorite things I've ever done to this day. I snorkeled the Great Barrier Reef. I looked at some fairy penguins and just explored this beautiful, beautiful country. So anyhow, I covered my adventure back in the very early days of the Active Travel Adventures podcast, and literally the first month when nobody knew what this podcast was, nobody was listening. So even though this was one of my favorite adventures, hardly anybody's heard it. As I'm getting ready for PodFest in Florida, I'm running out of time, and the episode I'd planned for today, I just wasn't going to be able to do it justice. So I'm going to do that in 2 weeks instead. So I hope you enjoy my adventure in Australia. I'll be back in 2 weeks. This is Kit Parks, Adventure On. Okay, the guide tells us. Do you want to go underwater or do you want to get tossed from the raft? My husband Bill decided for the whole raft. We're going under. So this week, we're going under, down under. It's time to switch it up a little bit. For the last couple of adventures, we've been going hiking. Today, we're going to do something a little bit different, and we're going to get wet. We are going to go snorkeling, whitewater rafting, but I'll still throw in a little bit of hiking because that is my favorite thing to do. We're not just going underwater. We're going down under. We're going to Australia. Welcome to Cairns. Cairns. Cairns, they throw a little R in there that you can hardly hear. It sounds like cans, Cairns. I'm going to always, you're just going to have to get used to it, mispronounce almost every odd name out there. So sorry about that. But anyway, so we're going to Cairns, which is in northeast Australia, and it's in a tropical area. Australia is huge, so it's not a place you want to just go for a week. Frankly, I would say you really need to plan at least, I'd say 2 at a minimum, really 3 at a minimum. When you go to Australia, it's like trying to see the United States in one visit. You just can't do it. So when you go, you need to pick certain areas to go to. When I went to Cairns, Melbourne, Sydney, and Kangaroo Island. In Cairns, which was one of the highlights, you have the Great Barrier Reef. We whitewatered raft the Tully River, which is Nat Geo's top 5-day whitewater rafting trips in the world. And there's Daintree Rainforest, which I did not go to, but I have done some research, so we can add that to this adventure today. Cairns itself is a cool little town on the Coral Sea. One thing that I don't know why I think of it so much is one evening, it's like the whole town turned out to do Zumba on the beach. I was like, how cool is that? So everybody just goes out there and does Zumba. So it's a very active town. There's lots of things to do, both in the water and in the hiking and all that kind of thing. So it's an adventure person's mecca. It is in a tropical area, so the wet season is around January, February, March. From what I understand, it rains really, really hard briefly, and you will still even get sunshine during those months. But generally speaking, most people tend to go other months. One of the top things to do is either to snorkel or scuba dive if you have a license, the Great Barrier Reef. I have a photo of me on the website, which I probably shouldn't put out there because I look ridiculous because the sun is so strong in Australia. Instead of giving you scuba outfits because it's warm, they give you a sunsuit. So I am in this ridiculous blue sun outfit that is probably my most unflattering photo ever. But just for you, I'm going to put it on the website. So you're in this gear and you go down there and then all you see is masses of color. There are coral and fish and turtles and it's just remarkable. You just feel like you're in this underwater wonderland. You're like, oh, there's Nemo. It's like so cool. You take a boat out to the islands and you go down and you snorkel. It's just a blast. So you can do this a day trip. You can also go to certain islands and spend overnight if you want to. It's just extraordinary. The reef itself is the largest living organism in the world. You can actually see it from outer space. The reef includes 900 islands and it is about 2,300 square kilometers, or about 1,400 square miles. It's in the Coral Sea off the coast of Queensland, Australia. It has been a World Heritage Site since 1981. It has about 400 species of coral, 30 species of whales, dolphins, and porpoises go in the area, 1,500 fish species, including our little clownfish Nemo. 6 different kinds of sea turtles breed there. There are 215 kinds of bird species that either visit or nest on the area islands, and almost 2,200 plant species. And if you hurry, on today's date, October 5th that I'm releasing this on the full moon. Next week is when the inner reefs are spawning. They do it the first full week after the full moon in October. The outer reefs spawn in November and December. I'm not quite sure what you'd see there, but I thought that was kind of cool, so I thought I'd throw that in there. While I wasn't lucky enough to see one of the dugongs, which is kind of like a manatee, one of those big sea cows, a cousin of the sea cow that eat the seagrass, are out in the reef as well. And the Aboriginal folks that are native there are still allowed to hunt them, but of course they're protected from everybody else. As a little side note, when I was doing some research on the Great Barrier Reef, I saw that James Cook, the famous explorer who's a descendant of my late husband, actually ran aground on the coral reef out there, which I thought was kind of interesting. He had to dump a bunch of the stuff off the ship to lift up the boat enough to get off the reef. Over 2 million people a year visit Cairns, not just to see the Great Barrier Reef, but also do such things as whitewater raft the Tully River, which Nat Geo has rated in the top 5 day trip whitewater rafting trips in the world. I was lucky enough to do that a couple of years ago, and it's a blast. It's a little bit vigorous. I would say class 3, sometimes class 4. And there's this one fall where right before you get to it, the guide asked us, do you want to go underwater or do you want to flip out of the boat? Because on this one section, it's class 4 on one side, or the really crazy people go over the class 5, which we would have died. But on the class 4, we decided to go under, where literally the raft goes under the water for the longest 3 seconds of your life. There are 2 other rafts in our group, and they're kids. They're like, oh yeah, we want to pop out. So they popped out like corks. And it was kind of fun. There's also a place when you go down, you go under a waterfall and you all get wet. That's kind of fun. Another area where we stopped and rested for a little bit. There's this big rock that you can climb up and jump off. In my memory, it was like 30 feet tall, but looking at some photos online, I was like, maybe it's like 20 feet. But all the young kids are doing it. I was like, I'm going to show them the old lady can do it too. So I did it as well. It was kind of fun. There's areas that it's calm enough that you can get out and kind of float in the water. And towards the end of it, all of a sudden the guide said, okay, everybody keep all your hands and feet inside the raft. We're like, why? There's been crocodile sighted around here. So anyhow, the guides know what they're doing. They know where it's safe and they know how to take care of you so that you're going to have a great time. It was a thrill. I loved a whitewater raft. I've probably only done it half a dozen times in my life, but 2 of the times have been in the top rivers in the world. One is the Tully, the other is Pequari. And I'm going to be doing the Pequari again next winter in February. And so we'll be highlighting that in the springtime on an episode. But this is, if you go to Australia and you love the water, and you love the whitewater raft, you definitely want to do the Tully River. For those truly hardcore, there's an extreme Tully River. And if you go to YouTube and put in the search thing, extreme Tully River, you'll see. That's too hardcore for me. It looks like fun, but that's probably a little bit too scary for me. This one, I would say, is fun, exciting, a couple twitches, like going over the thing was a little bit twitchy. It was still fun. They wouldn't let us do it if it wasn't safe. But that extreme thing, that might be a little bit more hardcore than what I'd like, but it is available for those that would like to do it. Before we get to the next part, I want to talk to you a little bit about the people of Cairns. At the hotel that we were staying at, the folks were so nice. Bill and I were walking to dinner one night, and all of a sudden a rainstorm came out of nowhere. The owner of that hotel sent somebody out to find us walking in the street to drive us to that restaurant so we wouldn't get wet, and then said to call them when we were finished dinner so they could pick us up so we wouldn't get wet. I was like, I have never had a hotel do that before in my life. And in fact, I wanted to wash some clothes because we've been traveling for a couple of weeks. And I said, I need to get some change for the laundry. He said, use the one that says it's broken. That one is free, because that was the one that they used. They were just so kind. And another one, and guys, you're probably going to get embarrassed at this story, so close your ears. But girls, you'll probably think this is funny. I'm a little bit older. I thought I was fully into full menopause. And on the day that I have got to go snorkeling and the next day whitewater raft, after it had been at least 8 months since my friend had visited, guess who comes to visit that night? And now 7 o'clock in the morning, I'm getting picked up to go on this snorkeling on the Great Barrier Reef. I was like, I have nothing. Nothing's open. And I was like, I have flown halfway across the world. I'm going in. I don't care if the great white sharks eat me or not. Gratefully, on the boat that took us out there, they had some supplies. But When I got back to the hotel, the lady drove me to a pharmacy. You couldn't have asked for nicer people. It's like they treat us like family. I mean, they treated me actually better than sometimes family does. It was just really, really kind, good people. And I just love Australian people. There's something in their character, in their nature, that just exudes warmth, friendliness, and kindness. So anyway, back to our adventure. Now we're going to go to the Daintree rainforest, which is the world's most diverse ecosystem. It has the greatest biodiversity of rare species on the planet. You can make Daintree a day trip, or there's an eco-luxury resort that you can stay in as well. They've got the tropical jungle, they've got beaches, they've got trails, you can swim, you can paddle, you can take boat rides, explore the rivers, they've got volcanic lakes, waterfalls. You'll be able to see the famous saltwater crocodiles with their mouths open, cooling themselves off. It's a birder's paradise as so many birds migrate here. Daintree has the largest population of primitive flowers in the world. Of the 19 species in the world, 12 of them are found in this forest. While you're there, take advantage of the hour-and-a-half guided hikes so that you can learn a lot about the Aboriginal culture and the plants. On the website this week, for this episode, I've included a lot more YouTube videos than normal just because there's so many beautiful things to see that I wanted to share them with you. I also want to just break away from my normal adventure thing. If you are going to Australia and you are going to Melbourne, make sure, I know you're going to be dead tired at the end of the day, but you're going to see a bus tour to go see the fairy penguins. Go do that. That is one of the funnest things I've ever seen in my whole life. So this has nothing to do with adventure, and I'm sorry for diverting, but I have to tell you, if you're going to Australia and you're going to Melbourne, you got to go see the fairy penguins. These little things are out at sea all day long, and right around dusk, they start coming into shore, and you're sitting on these little benches looking out at this little cove. There's only a certain area they come into, and you'll see these little black dots in the water, like little black mushrooms popping up out of the water. And these dots are ebbing and flowing, and it's like they're out there talking. Do you think it's safe? I don't know. What do you think? I'm not sure if it's safe or not. I think they might get us. I don't know. So they come in a little bit. No. It's too scary. So they go back out again. No, I want to go back in. So they come in. Nah, way too scary. They go back. And then finally somebody says, to heck with it. We're going in. And then out of the sea comes thousands of these little miniature penguins. It is one of the most remarkable things I've ever seen in my entire life. So if you go to Australia and you go to Melbourne, you're going to be tired. Get on the bus. You're going to sit on the bus for about 2 hours, and then you will see one of the most striking things of your whole life. But I digress. Back to Cairns. If you'd like to see some platypus, not too far away is the Platypus Park. So you can go there. You can also camp there if you'd like. Another side excursion is to go to the Tjapukai, Tjapukii Aboriginal Cultural Center. It's about 15 minutes from town, and they do performance dance, music, and storytelling about the world's oldest culture, 40,000 years old. One final note about Cairns. In the evening, they have these fruit bats, which look like little baby foxes with bat wings, and apparently they call them flying foxes. I didn't know that until I was doing some research. But when it gets a little bit dusk, the skies fill with these massive bats. And I guess they just eat off the fruits, and they live in about 40 different colonies in the city. The locals hate them, but the tourists think it's very cool. The locals think they're noisy, and they do make some noise. I didn't know what it was at the time. And they're smelly, but I have a deviated septum, so I can't smell anything. And I'm guessing the guano can drop on people. I didn't have that issue either. All I know is I thought it was cool. My verdict on this vacation is, as a activity level, probably 2, maybe not even that. Because mainly the raft, you're kind of sitting, you're paddling, but it's not you. It's the water's doing most of the work. Snorkeling, as much as you want to do. Same thing with scuba diving. But it is an active vacation. It's an extraordinary vacation. It should be very high on anybody's bucket list to go to Australia. It's probably one of the most fascinating places I've ever been to. You can get all the nitty-gritty details on the cheat sheet available at activetraveladventures.com for this episode. You can also see the show notes and a transcript of this episode. I've got tons of YouTube videos of different areas that we talked about today. If you haven't done so already, I'd like to please ask you to subscribe to the podcast. It really does help others like yourselves find the podcast, particularly since I'm so new. And if I could ask you also to please share this podcast with somebody else, introduce other adventurers to the podcast, and spread the word. I'd be so grateful. Before I turn off, I would also like to thank all of you who have taken the time to email me to give me encouragement, and it's just been so heartwarming. I know I'm kind of fumbly with the words and all that. I'm doing the best I can. I'm trying to learn and trying to do a good job for you, and your emails have been so encouraging to me. I just thank you from the bottom of my heart. So I'll see you in 2 weeks, and until next time, adventure on.